Shakespeare once said that a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. But if that were the case, dear Willie, answer me this. Would Steve Austin have been a success if he went by the name Chili McFreeze? Would Mick Foley have been a cherished performer if he went by Mason the Mutilator instead of Mankind? Would history have looked kinder on Terry Taylor if he were Mr. Perfect and not Kurt Hennig? Would Well Done have been one of the greatest tag teams of all time if not for their name? Okay, well, that's a bad example. In wrestling, a bad name can kill a performer's momentum dead before they ever get off the ground. And the one word that can pull an ice bucket challenge on a wrestler's push? The word new. Now, I don't mean just any old use of the word new. You know, New World Order, New Age Outlaws, New Jack. Those are not bad examples. I'm talking about when a promoter slaps a stale brand onto fresh talent or makes some creative changes and puts the word new in the title like it's some big improvement. And this week, I'm going to rank them the top 8 worst new things in wrestling. Number 8. The New Era. Okay, so you're part of the WWE creative team. There are dozens of you locked in a room in Stamford for hours trying to come up with a catchy new name for this new creative direction the company's going in. And the best you can come up with is The New Era? Now, don't get me wrong, the current crop of stars in the company right now is probably the most talented they've ever had. The most interesting? No. The most athletic and hard-hitting? Definitely. And yes, in terms of booking, they are certainly in a new era in terms of their philosophies. But just simply saying, duh, new era is criminally lazy. How long are they going to push this new era narrative? A year? 2 years? 5? However long they plan on doing it, already feels like it's been too long. The Ruthless Aggression era lasted nearly a decade because it didn't automatically date itself. Call it the Fighting era, the era of the athlete, the 5-star era, literally anything but the new era. Number 7. The New Foundation. Jim Neidhart and Owen Hart, 2 guys whose Hall of Fame spots are just sitting there collecting dust. But if and when they get inducted, it's safe to say this part of their careers will not be featured in the highlight package. As Bret Hart went about his singles career, the Anvil and the Rocket were left with little to do. And while this pairing was certainly better on paper than the other short-lived tag team Owen was a part of, this one didn't turn out much better. The WWF took the easy way out on this one, giving Hart and Neidhart the moniker of the New Foundation. Hey, the last names are the same as the original. Who's gonna know? The New Foundation only lasted a few months in the WWF. They had a forgettable feud with the Beverly Brothers, though to be honest, it's kind of hard to find a memorable feud involving those guys. And picked up a pay-per-view victory against the Orient Express before Neidhart left the company in 1992. In the end, the New Foundation was just one more stumbling block for Owen as he fought to get out from under Bret's enormous shadow. But for Neidhart, I guess it's a better look for him than how he's been portrayed on Total Divas.
It's a nice mount.
Did you take it off the wall?
Yeah. Number 6. The New Midnight Express. When you think of epic tag teams of the 1980s, the Midnight Express of NWA fame comes to mind. Their runs in the Mid-South and Florida, along with their feud with the Rock and Roll Express, are the stuff of legend. The team went through a couple of roster changes during the decade, but none were as bad as what came about in 1998. More than 8 years after the original group officially disbanded, Bart Gunn and Bob Holly were lumped together to become the New Midnight Express as part of the WWF's short-lived NWA invasion. The duo had Jim Cornette by their side and won the NWA tag team titles during their brief run, but ultimately nobody cared. Probably because nobody believed that these 2 glorified jobbers were suddenly bodacious or bombastic. The final nail in the coffin was during the much maligned Brawl for All, when Holly and Gunn were pitted against each other in the first round for no reason. This questionable booking decision led to the dissolution of the team and prompted Jim Cornette to retire as a manager. TYFYB. Number 5. The New Rockers. Like the Hart Foundation and the Legion of Doom, the Rockers are up there in the debate for the best tag teams in wrestling history. Look at the impact they've made on the business. To this day, fans will still look at young, popular tag teams and ask, which one's Shawn? Which one's Marty? Which I'm sure makes Marty Jannetty feel real good about himself. Anyway, while Shawn Michaels was off becoming one of the best singles performers of his generation, Jannetty needed someone to team with, because he damn sure wasn't clean enough to be trusted with a solo run of his own. In 1995, Jannetty was paired with a young, fresh-faced Al Snow, who was given the most dated name mashup of all time, Leif Cassidy. At first, the duo was portrayed just like the original Rockers team, but along the way, they became silly, goofy heels. They were told to act as if they were straight out of the Monkees TV show from the 1960s. Sure, that'll get over with a crowd of kids in the 90s. Oh, and in case you were wondering, who was it who pitched this brilliant idea of the new Rockers as cheesy, goofy heels? Why, none other than the Heartbreak Kid himself. Thanks, Shawn, I'm sure Marty really appreciated that. Number 4. The New Blackjacks. Damn it, Vince, no more of these new teams already!
It's a new day, yes it is!
Okay, except for them. Yes, sir, the 1990s saw a bumper crop of old tag teams getting a facelift, but unlike the previous teams I've been mentioning, this one didn't feature any of the original members. Good or bad? You decide. The original Blackjacks, a bruiser team from the 1970s, were comprised of Mulligan and Lanza. They won several tag team titles during the decade, but perhaps none as memorable as their run with the WWF Tag Team Championships in 1975.
Oh, you better believe it, Zane. And who was the guiding light that led the Blackjacks to those championships? It was me, baby!
Oh, hey Lou, nice seeing you. Yes, that's right. You were definitely instrumental in their run as tag team champs.
Captain's happening, baby. I'm Captain Lou, and I'm talking to you. I take them, I mold them, I'm the guiding light. I'm a pepper, you're a pepper. I got Pac-Man fever. Everybody do the Mario. Swing your arms from side to side. Come on, it's time to go. Do the Mario.
Did I just have a stroke? In 1997, the new Blackjacks were formed. This time it was Barry Windham, the son of Blackjack Mulligan, and Bradshaw, the nephew of Blackjack Lanza. That alone would have been a good reason for the two to carry on the Blackjack name, but me explaining that connection just now is more than the company ever did with these two.
What's that you say? Barry Windham's a former NWA World Champion? Who cares?
The pairing lasted for less than a year, but they did get in the card of WrestleMania 13 before eventually splitting up. Here's the big problem with all these new teams, new rockers, new foundation, new Blackjacks. When you put the word new at the beginning, all it does is remind the fans of this older, better version that they liked while they have to sit here and watch this crappy imitation. Did Vince McMahon learn nothing from Coca-Cola?
No more words.
Bradshaw went on to be in one of the most popular teams of the Attitude Era, and eventually became one of the best heels of the 2000s, while Barry Windham became a Hall of Famer and the uncle of a couple of future WWE stars. Speaking of which, number 3. Bray Wyatt, the new face of fear. I tell you, if there's anyone on this list I'm more frustrated to include, I haven't seen them yet. When he first debuted in the summer of 2013, Bray Wyatt's character was more of a Danny Spivey knockoff, but over time it's evolved into more of a pseudo-Undertaker persona. He's done a whole lot better with it than Mordecai ever did. The comparisons between Taker and Wyatt were becoming so obvious that it only made sense for the two to face off at some point. At WrestleMania 31, this dream match would finally take place. During the build-up, the Eater of Worlds would take on the name The New Face of Fear. He told fans that The Undertaker's run was coming to an end, and that now he was the spooky face that ran the place. Which would have been all well and good, except, well, Taker still had to get his heat back from WrestleMania 30. Yes, folks, there would be no passing of the torch in Silicon Valley, as The Undertaker defeated Wyatt in swift fashion. Then he did it again later that year at Survivor Series in even quicker fashion. I'll spare you the gory details, but it's safe to say the last year and a half or so has not been good for the Eater of Pins. I mean, the Eater of Worlds. Looks like the new face of fear is just going to have to be the face of fear in waiting for a little while longer. Number 2. Legion of Doom 2000 and 2.0. It's bad enough when a classic team gets one retread, but what happens when they do it 2 times? Animal and Hawk, the Road Warriors, the Legion of Doom. Call them whatever you want, they're simply known as one of the most dominant and decorated tag teams of the last 40 years. But in 1998, the WWF decided to mess with the formula. Gone was manager Paul Ellering, in his place was Sonny. They were also given helmets with teeth for some reason. Oh yes, and they were also given the name LOD 2000, joining the Techno Team, Harlem Heat, and the NWO as part of the Hindsight Club. Eventually, Droz joined the team as Sonny was being phased out. The man known as Puke would become more involved with the group as 1998 went on, teaming with Animal while Hawk was dealing with personal demons, both in storyline and in real life. Tasteful! Like the new Foundation, this group didn't last very long and didn't amount to much, but at least Owen didn't try to kill Jim by pushing him off the top of the Titantron. The company learned their lesson from LOD 2000 and never tried to capitalize on the team's popularity again. Until they did it again. In 2003, just months after the team made a one-time appearance on Raw, Hawk died unexpectedly. 2 years later, Animal returned to WWE and began teaming with Heidenreich, the Michael Cole sodomizing poet who was rumored to originally debut as an unfrozen Nazi. Look it up! The unique pair made it to the top of the mountain on SmackDown, winning the brand's tag team titles from M&M. Heidenreich then got his own shoulder spikes and face paint, while Hawk spun around in his double mohawked grave. And after receiving the rub from a legend like Animal, what's old Heidenreich up to now? Oh yeah, that's the good shit. And the number 1 worst new thing in wrestling is the new generation. By the early 1990s, the WWF was in a rough spot. Business was down due to the steroid scandal that nearly put Vince McMahon in prison. The company tried to spin the negative into a positive by focusing on talent who didn't look they were all on the gas and calling it the new generation. And let's just say results were mixed. Though the new generation did bring about the rise of stars like Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Diesel, Razor Ramon, and 1-2-3 Kid, we were also given Lex Luger on a bus.
I'll be a hero.
And here's the funny thing about that. Those names I just listed off for you, those are the only names that people bring up when people talk positively about the new generation because those are the only ones who are worth a damn. Take a look at just some of the legendary gimmicks that grace us with their presence during this time period. Bastion Booger, Mantar, Duke the Dumpster Drozy, The Goon, Kona Crush, Isaac Yankem, the aforementioned Leaf Cassidy, Sparky Plug, frickin' Fantasio. Sure, today's new era has its own problems, but at least you can't boil it down to its essence and only come up with 5 good people. By the time the old guard had been pushed out of the company, the roster depth was non-existent. The champions couldn't draw, and the crowd pops were minuscule. This shiny, tiny rehash of the 80s era, combined with the company's negative stigma after the steroid trial, led to one of the darkest periods in WWF history. Had they kept going in this direction, they would have surely gone under at the hands of WCW. It took a dramatic overhaul in their style and presentation to be considered a force in wrestling again. But is it any surprise? After all, there's almost no bigger red flag that something sucks in wrestling than just by calling it new. Got any names that I missed? Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.